What if I told you the United States once punished money printing with death? Yeah, death. Not for murder, not for treason, but for messing with the dollar. Because in 1792, America passed a single law that secretly shaped every paycheck, every crisis, and every lie about the economy you hear today. It was called the Coinage Act, and it built the most powerful currency in history. But over 230 years, that same system was twisted into a machine that quietly steals from you every single day. What began as honest money backed by gold and silver became the world's biggest illusion of paper promises, digital debt, and policies that reward the few while draining everyone else. So how did a law written by the founding fathers turn into the blueprint for financial control? And what happens when the last shred of trust disappears? This is the untold story of the Coinage Act of 1792, the day America tried to protect its money and accidentally created the weapon that's destroying it. Before we start, subscribe because the truth gets darker the deeper you go. Philadelphia, 1792, a new nation, barely 10 years old, still bleeding from revolution and already drowning in chaos. No national money, no stability, just a mess of Spanish pesos, British pounds, and worthless paper called the Continental dollar that collapsed so badly people joked not worth a continental. Into that chaos stepped Alexander Hamilton. Brilliant, controversial, obsessed with building a system that could outlast kings. He believed independence meant nothing without monetary freedom, so he designed a currency backed by reality, gold and silver, not promises. The Coinage Act created the U.S. Mint and defined the dollar as exactly 371 grains of pure silver, about 24 grams, a number so precise it told the world America took value seriously. Gold coins were set at 15 times that weight, a perfect balance between stability and trade. It wasn't just economics, it was philosophy. Money had to be honest, measurable, incorruptible. Every coin engraved with liberty on one side and an eagle on the other, symbols of law, labor, and freedom. But hidden inside that perfection was the flaw that would haunt America for centuries. The fixed ratio between gold and silver looked logical on paper, but markets don't obey laws. When gold's price rose overseas, silver vanished from circulation. Merchants melted coins, hoarded metal, and sent it abroad. The system meant to keep balance started leaking trust. Yet even then, the founders treated money as sacred. They made counterfeiting a capital crime punishable by death, because to them, debasing currency wasn't a technical error, it was moral theft, stealing from every citizen at once. The perfect system didn't last long. The gold-silver ratio that looked stable in 1792 started collapsing within decades as global markets moved faster than Congress could blink. By the early 1800s, gold was undervalued, silver coins disappeared overseas, and America faced its first real monetary crisis. What was meant to guarantee stability had created scarcity. The rich hoarded metal, the poor were left with paper, and the cracks in Hamilton's dream began to spread. In 1834, Congress tried to fix it, adjusting the ratio from 15-1 to 16-1 to match the world price. But that small change flipped the system upside down. Suddenly, gold was worth more. Silver vanished entirely, and the nation quietly slipped from bimetallic money to an unofficial gold standard long before anyone voted on it. By the 1850s, California's gold rush flooded the economy with new supply. Inflation kicked in, prices wobbled, and by 1861, the Civil War finished the job. Washington needed money fast. Metal was gone, so they printed it. Greenbacks, paper notes backed by nothing, poured out by the millions. For the first time since 1792, American money wasn't honest metal, but political ink. Inflation exploded. Soldiers were paid in paper that lost value before they could spend it. Savings dissolved, and Wall Street speculators grew rich while ordinary people were ruined. The very law that once punished debasement with death had been replaced by a government doing it legally, calling it financing the war. Trust was shattered, the line between value and illusion erased, and the promise of the Coinage Act, honest money for a free republic, was officially dead.
When the smoke of the Civil War cleared, America faced a brutal question. Should money return to gold and silver, or stay paper forever? Farmers and workers wanted more greenbacks, easy credit, a way to breathe. But bankers and industrialists wanted hard money, scarce money, gold money that protected their wealth. In 1873, Congress quietly made the decision for everyone. It demonetized silver without public debate, killing the bimetallic dream. Overnight, millions of silver coins became worthless for currency. Prices of crops crashed, debts became heavier, and the dollar was chained to gold alone. They called it the crime of '73, and for good reason. It was the moment power over money moved from the people to the elites who controlled gold. Anger erupted across the country. Populist movements rose, shouting "Free silver!" They believed honest money meant equal opportunity, not bankers' privilege. The famous Cross of Gold speech thundered through America. "You shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold," a desperate cry against a financial system that favored Wall Street over Main Street. But the system didn't change. By 1900, gold was law, silver was history, and the Coinage Act's founding promise to balance freedom with fairness was gone. Money no longer served the citizen, it served those who controlled the vault. The same law meant to prevent financial manipulation had evolved into the perfect tool for it, a quiet empire built not on armies but on credit. The people lost their anchor, and the bankers gained their throne. From that point on, wealth was no longer earned through production, it was manufactured through policy. Whoever controlled gold controlled the future. And the gap between the working man and the ruling class widened into a canyon. The nation that once promised liberty through honest money was now enslaved by scarcity, trapped in a system where the few could tighten or loosen the flow of credit at will. Every panic, every collapse, every recovery became another opportunity for those at the top to buy the bottom. The dream of equality through currency had been replaced by hierarchy through control, and the golden dollar that glittered with power no longer represented freedom. It represented obedience. By the early 1900s, the United States had the wealth of an empire, but the control of a cartel. Money was tight, banks were panicking, and every crisis made one truth clearer. Whoever controlled credit controlled the country. In 1913, that control was officially handed over to a new institution, the Federal Reserve, a central bank created in the name of stability, but designed to give a handful of unelected men the power to print, lend, and manipulate the value of every dollar in existence. From that moment, money stopped being a measure of value and became a tool of policy. The Fed could create credit with a pen stroke, banks could lend 10 times more than they held, and politicians could spend without limits as long as the printing presses kept humming. It was the quiet revolution Hamilton never saw coming. The shift from honest weight to invisible promises. When the Great Depression hit in 1929, the system cracked open. Banks collapsed, savings vanished, and the gold standard that once symbolized trust turned into a prison. People hoarded gold, the government needed spending, and in 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt made the most shocking move in monetary history. He outlawed private gold ownership, ordered citizens to surrender their coins to the government, and paid them in paper. The same government that once executed counterfeiters was now forcing citizens to trade real money for promises. Overnight, the dollar was devalued, savings were stolen in plain sight, and the wealth of a nation shifted upward. It was legal theft disguised as rescue. The founders' ideal of sound money died in silence, replaced by a new creed: trust the state, not the standard. And America obeyed. What began as an emergency measure became a permanent mindset, the idea that the government could rewrite the rules of money whenever it needed to. The line between law and policy disappeared, replaced by faith in bureaucrats who could print solutions to every crisis. The people surrendered control without realizing it, trading freedom for the illusion of stability. By the time the printing presses stopped, the country was no longer bound by gold, only by promises. And once value became negotiable, everything else followed. Morality, markets, even truth itself. The system had discovered its most powerful secret, that if you control money, you don't need to control people. They'll control themselves.
After World War II, America stood on top of the world. Its factories intact, its gold vaults full, its enemies broke. And in 1944, the U.S. used that prominence to rewrite the global game. 44 nations gathered at Bretton Woods to agree that every major currency would be tied to the dollar, and the dollar itself tied to gold. On paper, it looked perfect. Stability through trust in America. But underneath, it was a silent takeover. The world's money now depended on Washington's word. Through the 1950s and 60s, America printed more dollars than it had gold to back.
financing wars, welfare, and ambition, while foreign governments started asking for the real metal instead of paper. By the late 1960s, U.S. gold reserves were bleeding, trust was collapsing, and even France sent a warship to New York to collect its gold, a global vote of no confidence in the American promise. Then in 1971, President Richard Nixon went on TV and announced that the dollar would temporarily stop being convertible to gold, a line that sounded technical but ended centuries of financial order. That temporary suspension became permanent. The dollar was now pure fiat, money backed by nothing but belief in the system. In one night, the world's anchor of value turned into an instrument of control. From that moment, money was whatever the government said it was, and the printing press became the most powerful weapon on earth. Debt soared, inflation followed, and people kept working harder for paper that bought less every year. The Coinage Act's definition of money, honest, measurable, limited, was erased. The United States had turned from a nation of coins and labor into a nation of credit and debt. And the illusion worked because no one dared question it. As long as the light stayed on and the shelves stayed full, the lie could live. But beneath that calm surface, a deeper shift had begun. Money was no longer a tool of trade, it was a tool of empire. Whoever controlled the dollar controlled the world. Through loans, sanctions, and foreign aid, Washington exported not just its currency, but its influence. Entire nations were pulled into the orbit of a system that no longer needed armies to conquer, only credit. The gold standard was gone, but a new kind of standard had replaced it. Faith in the dollar enforced by necessity. And once the world depended on it, the illusion became unbreakable, a pyramid of promises built on nothing but trust in the one nation that had learned how to print power. After 1971, the rules of money changed forever, but no one noticed because the illusion felt real. People still worked, banks still lent, and the dollar still bought food, fuel, and dreams. But beneath the surface, everything had flipped. What used to be a promise of value became a promise of control. The Federal Reserve could now create trillions with a few keystrokes. Governments could borrow endlessly, and inflation, the crime that once carried the death penalty, became official policy, rebranded as economic stimulus. The U.S. Mint still stamped coins with the word liberty, but their metal was worthless, symbolic tokens of a trust already broken. The modern dime or quarter wasn't even worth its face value in metal, yet people carried them as if the illusion still held. Inflation slowly devoured savings, wages stagnated, and every new dollar printed made the last one weaker. Politicians called it growth, economists called it necessary, but the founders would have called it theft. What Hamilton once designed as a firewall against tyranny had become the very mechanism of it. The power to create money had become the power to control behavior, to shape markets, to move wealth without consent. Every bailout, every crisis, every rate cut was another act of invisible redistribution from workers to the system itself. And the genius of it all? The victims never noticed. They just felt life getting harder, prices rising, and opportunities shrinking, without realizing that the value was being siphoned from their pockets one policy at a time. The dollar, once a measure of freedom, had become the price of obedience. And that obedience is what keeps the illusion alive, because as long as people still believe in paper, they'll never question who controls the printer. The system doesn't need to force loyalty, it buys it through comfort, through routine, through the illusion of choice. Every paycheck, every swipe, every digital transaction becomes a silent vote for the very machine that devalues it. It's not money anymore, it's faith management. And the higher the debt climbs, the more that faith becomes a weapon. This isn't economics, it's psychology. And the most powerful form of control is the one that feels voluntary.
Today, money isn't metal or paper anymore. It's code. Numbers on screens that can appear or vanish at the speed of light. Only a tiny fraction of the global money supply exists in physical form. The rest is digital debt circulating through servers controlled by banks and central institutions. This made transactions faster, but it also made control absolute. Governments can freeze accounts, track every transfer, and inject or drain liquidity with a few commands. Central banks are now developing digital currencies that could erase cash entirely. Programmable money, where every transaction is recorded, every purchase approved, and every act of dissent punished silently through numbers. In that system, money stops being freedom and becomes permission. They can decide what you buy, when you buy it, or if you're even allowed to. Expiration dates, spending limits, carbon scores, all possible with one update. And the oldest idea in economic liberty, that your money is your property, could disappear without a vote. This isn't fiction, it's already happening, and it's the final stage of a process that began in 1792. When the founders wrote the Coinage Act, they built money to be real, measurable, and moral. Now, it's virtual, unlimited, and political. The same tool that once protected citizens from tyranny is being re-engineered to enforce it. Digital money isn't innovation, it's centralization disguised as progress. And the price of convenience might be the death of freedom itself. And yet most people will welcome it because it will look safe, clean, efficient. No more fraud, no more cash, just a perfect digital world. But perfection has a price, and that price is control. In a future where every transaction is monitored, privacy will be rebranded as a crime, independence as risk, and saving outside the system as rebellion. They won't need to take your wealth by force, they'll just deny access. One click and your existence becomes unapproved. The greatest form of control isn't fear, it's dependency, and that's exactly what programmable money creates. The end of financial freedom won't come with chaos, it will come with a notification.
Every empire thinks it's different until the money dies. Rome diluted its silver, France printed its paper, Germany ran its presses, and each believed it could cheat the laws of value until trust vanished and everything collapsed. The United States is walking the same path, just slower, quieter, and wrapped in modern branding. We call it stimulus, quantitative easing, monetary policy, but it's all the same idea, printing wealth that doesn't exist and hoping people never notice the cost. The founders did notice. They built the Coinage Act to make sure no one, not even the government, could redefine value without consequence. They tied money to metal because metal doesn't lie. It can't be voted into existence. It can't be faked by policy. But today, value is whatever a central bank says it is, and honesty has been replaced by inflation. That's the real moral collapse, not just the economic one. We now live in a world where debt is permanent, savings melt, and the people closest to the printer get rich, while everyone else falls behind. It's the perfect invisible tax, one that steals without leaving fingerprints. But history never forgets. It only repeats. The same arrogance that destroyed empires past now fuels the digital future, where your money will exist only by permission, programmable, traceable, and erasable. They call it progress, but it's control. An empire built on code instead of gold. And when the trust breaks, it won't matter how advanced the system is, because no algorithm can replace belief. The Coinage Act of 1792 was more than a law. It was a warning, a promise that money should serve people, not rule them. 2 centuries later, we've turned that promise upside down. Our money is infinite, our trust is fragile, and our freedom hangs on both. So the question isn't whether the system will break, it's when. And when it does, history won't be kind. Because the real collapse never starts in banks or markets. It starts in the moment people stop believing their money is real. And when that moment comes, no government, no central bank, and no digital currency can save what's already been sold. The fall won't be sudden, it'll be silent, and it's already begun. Subscribe to discover the stories no one else dares to tell.